We listened carefully to it. He mentioned inflation right up top, saying he was more confident of inflation. And you, in your question, were very emphatic, saying you called it a thief, actually, a thief that actually takes out of the paychecks of Americans. Did you come away from these hearings more confident that inflation will remain under control?
I did, and thanks for the invitation. You know, growth is not incompatible with low inflation. This is one of the economic myths. So I think the Fed should stay focused on stable prices, and their 2% target is certainly adequate. And I have confidence that Chairman Powell and his colleagues will stay focused on that, because inflation is the biggest thief for working people across the world.
But as we create more goods, as we pay people more money, the thing that will keep us away from inflation, as you know, you have a business background, is increase in productivity. How confident are you that, in fact, we will get that degree of increased productivity? Because let's be honest, over the last 20 years, we haven't had it.
Right. I agree. It's the biggest challenge, one of the biggest economic challenges we have, one of the biggest economic challenges that Chairman Powell is inheriting in his new job. But the capital investment features of the tax bill just passed are designed to drive investment. And as Chairman Powell said, new investment will lead to higher productivity, which will boost wage growth. That doesn't have to be, per se, inflationary.
Those tax cuts, for example, they're being actually financed by more and more deficit. We have heard Chairman Powell talk about how it's going to become more expensive when it comes to servicing U.S. debt. What did you take away from his comments?
I took his comments away that he's going to stick with this longer-term plan of balance sheet normalization, which will include raising short-term rates in conjunction with what the market indicators are suggesting. And that by doing that, he'll do it in his open market operations. He'll do it by shrinking the Fed balance sheet. But I think he's been very clear in setting expectations for the market, and he's not out ahead of his plan.
What about when it comes to regulation? Because you asked him about the Volcker rule. Will the Fed take an active role in easing this?
Well, one of the concerns I had with Dodd-Frank was the Volcker rule, which was 1,000 pages, was too vague. It can't be administered by our bank regulators. They've come and testified to that account. So the bill I've introduced would call for harmonization of Volcker. It would place the Federal Reserve in charge of interpreting that rule and setting up best practices for the regulators to try to interpret it. I think that will improve its application. I think it will improve it for the capital market system and will not harm normal trading or capital markets activities. And so I appreciated the chance that he felt strongly that that was a good move in his testimony.
And finally, Congressman, one of the things that Jay Powell came back to repeatedly was the question of a sustainable fiscal path. And he didn't specifically say that just because of tax cuts. If anything, it may well be because of entitlements. But however you get there, we've got a problem building up debt, as I know you agree in this country. Right. That's not Republican, that's not Democrat, that's all of government. How confident are you that we can actually do something? Because thus far, we, the American taxpayers, haven't seen much out of Capitol Hill to really deal with the deficit.
Boy, I agree with you completely, and I think news programs and coverage by journalists that 2/3 of our budget's not voted on by Congress. It's our mandatory spending programs. They're driving the fiscal instability for this country in the out years, and if we're serious about fiscal accountability and fiscal long-term stability, the Congress needs to modify our mandatory spending programs. I'm confident that it should be addressed. I've urged the President to be a leader on it, as well as members of Congress, and that's what needs to happen if we want to have that as an outcome.